It was a Tuesday afternoon when a woman pulled into my bay, visibly stressed, already holding her phone with a quote pulled up on the screen. $340 for brake pads, rotor resurfacing, and labor. The service advisor had told her she needed it done immediately. The brakes were squealing. The car felt unsafe. She asked me to confirm the diagnosis before she authorized anything. I had her drive it slowly through the parking lot, listened for about 4 seconds, and told her the truth. There was nothing wrong with her brakes. She had glazed pads, a thin layer of oxidation on the rotors from sitting over a long weekend, and about 70% pad life remaining. The squeal was real. The problem was not. She did not need $340 worth of work. She needed 2 minutes and the right information. That is what this video is about. Brake squeal is one of the most misunderstood sounds a car makes. It triggers immediate fear because everyone has been conditioned to treat it as an emergency. And that fear is profitable for shops that would rather replace parts than explain what is actually happening. Today, I am pulling back the curtain on why brakes squeal when nothing is wrong, the exact 2-minute fix that eliminates it for free, and how to tell the genuine warning sounds apart from the fake ones. By the time this video ends, you will never panic over brake noise the same way again. Here is what most drivers do not realize. Brake squeal is not always a symptom. Sometimes it is just physics. Your braking system works through controlled friction, a pad clamped against a spinning rotor. That contact generates heat, vibration, and under the right conditions, harmonic resonance. That resonance is noise. It is the same principle as running a wet finger around the rim of a wine glass. Nothing is wrong with the glass. Nothing is broken. You have just created the conditions for a specific frequency to amplify itself. Brakes do the same thing, and there are 5 common situations where they do it loudly while being perfectly functional. The first is the morning squeal. Your car sits overnight, and humidity in the air settles on the rotor surface and forms a thin layer of surface rust. This is normal. Cast iron rusts fast, especially in humid climates. When you back out of the driveway and apply the brakes for the first time, the pad scrapes that rust layer off the rotor. That scraping is loud, and it sounds wrong. It is not. It disappears completely after 2 or 3 normal stops. If your brakes squeal only in the morning and then go quiet, your brakes are fine. The surface rust is clearing itself exactly the way it was designed to. The second common cause is glazing. When brake pads are subjected to consistent light pressure over time, or when a driver rides the brakes on a long downhill, or when the car sits unused for extended periods, the pad surface and rotor surface can both develop a smooth, hardened layer called a glaze. Glazed surfaces vibrate against each other differently than properly textured surfaces. The contact becomes less like controlled friction and more like 2 smooth surfaces chattering. That chatter becomes noise. In many cases, this resolves on its own after a few firm brake applications from highway speed down to a stop. You are essentially scuffing the glaze off. In stubborn cases, the fix is so simple that shops almost never tell you about it because it takes 2 minutes and costs nothing. The third is temperature-related vibration. Brakes operate across a wide temperature range. Cold pads on a cold rotor behave differently than warm components. Certain pad compounds, especially semi-metallic pads, are noisier at low temperatures and settle down once they warm up. This is a material characteristic, not a defect. If your brakes squeal only when the car is cold and are quiet once everything warms up, you are experiencing normal material behavior. Nothing needs replacing. The fourth is brake dust accumulation. Brake dust is a byproduct of normal braking. Over time, it builds up on the rotor surface, inside the caliper bracket, and along the edges of the pad. That buildup can change how the pad contacts the rotor. It can create uneven pressure distribution and introduce a squeal that comes and goes depending on how aggressively you brake and how recently you drove through rain or a car wash. Again, this is not a wear issue. It is a contamination issue with a simple solution. The fifth is resonance from loose hardware. Your brake pads sit in a carrier bracket and are held in place with small clips and shims. These components are designed to absorb vibration and prevent the pad from rattling or singing against the bracket. When those clips stretch, corrode, or lose tension over time, the pad has a small amount of movement it should not have. Under light braking, that movement creates a vibration, and that vibration creates a squeal. The pad itself can have 60% life remaining. The rotor can be perfectly smooth, but the noise will persist until the hardware is replaced or shimmed correctly. Hardware kits cost between $5 and $15 and take about 20 minutes to install. Shops almost never lead with this solution. Understanding this changes everything. The moment you realize brake squeal has 5 common non-emergency causes, you stop being easy prey for the upsell. You start asking the right questions. You start separating the noise that means nothing from the noise that means everything. And yes, there are sounds that mean everything. Those exist too, and I will get to exactly how to tell them apart. But first, you need to understand the fix that eliminates the most common brake squeal before you ever spend $1. The fix is simple enough that it feels wrong. That is usually how the best solutions feel. When something this easy solves a problem people routinely pay hundreds to address, there is a natural skepticism. This is not a myth, not a forum trick, and not wishful thinking. It is a legitimate procedure that professional mechanics perform in their own shops, just not always on your behalf. The procedure is called bedding. More accurately, for the purpose of clearing glaze and light contamination, it is a controlled scuff sequence. Here is the exact process. Find a safe, empty road or parking lot. Drive at approximately 30 miles per hour. Apply firm, steady brake pressure until the car slows to around 5 miles per hour. Do not come to a complete stop. Allow the car to roll slowly for 10 seconds, then repeat the stop. Do this 3 to 5 times. That is it. What you are doing is applying enough friction energy to the pad and rotor surface to slightly abrade the glaze layer. You are also heating the pad material evenly to help it seat flat against the rotor. The brief roll period allows heat to dissipate before the next cycle without letting the pad sit stationary on the hot rotor, which would imprint a new pressure mark. After 3 to 5 cycles, drive at normal speed and allow everything to cool for 10 minutes without braking hard. Then, test. In the majority of cases, the squeal is gone. The second half of this fix targets contamination and loose hardware. Get the car onto ramps or safely lift it on jack stands. Remove the wheel. Spray the rotor surface with brake cleaner, available at any auto parts store for under $5. It evaporates completely and leaves no residue. Spray inside the caliper bracket, along the pad edges, and anywhere brake dust has accumulated. While the wheel is off, check the pad retaining clips. These are the small spring steel clips that hold the pad ears in the bracket channel. Press on them with your finger. They should have tension. If they feel loose, spring flat, or show heavy rust, they need replacement. Hardware kits for most common vehicles are inexpensive and take minutes to swap. While you are there, inspect the pad shim. This is a thin metal plate bonded or clipped to the back of the pad. Its job is to dampen vibration. If it is missing, separated, or corroded, it is no longer doing that job. Applying a thin layer of brake caliper grease to the back of the pad on the metal contact surfaces and not on the friction material gives the shim something to work against and reduces the resonance that creates squeal. This step alone eliminates noise in cars where everything else is fine. Reassemble, torque the lug nuts to spec, and perform the bedding sequence again. You have now addressed the 3 most common causes of brake squeal without spending more than a few dollars and 2 minutes of actual effort. The job takes longer to describe than to perform. This is where frustration sets in for most drivers, not because the fix is complicated, but because they realize how many times they paid for something this simple to be done for them, or paid for parts they did not need because nobody explained that a spray can and a short braking sequence could solve everything. But I want to be completely honest with you because this is where responsible information matters. There are brake noises that should be taken seriously. Learning to distinguish them is as important as knowing the free fix. A squeal that is continuous, not just in the morning, not just when cold, but every single time you brake regardless of temperature or conditions, can indicate worn pads reaching the wear indicator. Most modern brake pads have a small metal tab that contacts the rotor when the pad friction material wears down to approximately 2 to 3 millimeters. This contact is intentional. It is designed to create exactly this kind of continuous squeal as a warning. The difference between this and glazed noise is consistency. Glazed noise changes, it responds to driving conditions. Wear indicator contact does not. It is always there, every stop, every temperature, every weather condition. Grinding is a different category entirely. A grinding sound during braking is metal on metal contact, which means the pad friction material is gone and the backing plate or caliper hardware is now cutting into the rotor. This is not a squeal situation. This is a brake failure in progress. Rotors damaged this way often cannot be resurfaced. They require replacement. The repair cost jumps significantly. More importantly, braking performance is compromised in a real and dangerous way. Grinding means stop driving and address it immediately. Pulsation combined with noise is another serious signal. If you feel the brake pedal pulse under your foot while braking, and that pulsation is accompanied by noise, you likely have rotor warpage or severe thickness variation across the rotor face. This causes uneven pad contact, inconsistent stopping force, and vibration that travels through the pedal. Light warpage can sometimes be addressed through resurfacing. Severe warpage means replacement. Either way, a free bedding sequence will not fix this. The physical geometry of the rotor is the problem. Squealing from the rear only, combined with the parking brake not holding well, can point to rear drum brake issues if your car uses drums in the rear. Contaminated drum linings, worn adjusters, or seized hardware all produce noise and all reduce braking effectiveness. This is not a free fix situation. These symptoms require inspection. The critical skill is learning to listen with context. Where is the noise coming from? Is it one wheel or all 4? Does it happen only when braking or also when rolling without braking? Does it change when you apply light pressure versus firm pressure? Does it disappear after warming up or persist regardless? These questions give you diagnostic information that no shop can argue with when you walk in with answers. You are no longer guessing. You are observing. And an observed problem is a solved problem. This is also why the 2-minute fix matters beyond just saving money. When you perform it yourself and the noise disappears, you have confirmed that the problem was glaze, contamination, or hardware, not wear, not warpage, not a mechanical failure. That confirmation is worth more than any diagnostic fee. It gives you certainty. And certainty is what removes the fear that shops can sometimes exploit when they hand you an estimate before you have asked a single question. I have been doing this long enough to recognize the pattern. A driver comes in worried. The worry makes them agreeable. An agreeable customer is easier to close on a service they may not need. The brake squeal story is one of the most reliable ways that dynamic plays out. Not because every shop is dishonest, many are not, but because the system rewards the recommendation to replace rather than the recommendation to observe and wait. A brake job generates revenue. Telling someone to drive firmly in an empty parking lot does not appear on any invoice, so it gets skipped. You end up paying for what could have been free. And this extends beyond brakes. The same principle applies to the entire vehicle. Modern cars have become extraordinarily complex, and that complexity creates opportunities for misdiagnosis. It creates situations where a problem that is really just physics or a minor material condition gets treated like a structural failure. Your job as the driver is to understand enough to ask the question before you authorize the answer. Brake squeal is the perfect entry point for that mindset. It is common enough that most drivers deal with it multiple times over their ownership experience. It is frightening enough that most drivers respond emotionally rather than analytically. And the solution is real, free, and takes less time than waiting in a service department lobby. Start there. Listen to what your brakes are actually telling you. Most of the time, they are telling you nothing more serious than physics. The morning squeal clears after 3 stops. The glaze disappears after the bedding sequence. The hardware clip gets replaced for $10. The noise that truly matters, the continuous wear indicator squeal, the grinding metal contact, the pulsating pedal, those are things you will now recognize instantly. Not because you panicked, but because you know what to listen for. Brakes that squeal are not always brakes that are failing. Sometimes they are just brakes that need to be understood. And now you understand them. If this saved you money or changed how you think about brake noise, hit like. It helps other drivers find this before they authorize a job they did not need. Subscribe for weekly breakdowns that put real diagnostic knowledge in your hands, not someone else's. If you have ever paid for a brake job that turned out to be unnecessary, drop that story in the comments. The most expensive repair is the one you approved before you asked the right question.